Now we're on Daf Tzadi Aleph Amid Beis, and we're trying to explain that Chatos v Osham could be derived together from the word Zevach. The Amar Mar, because we have a brisa with regard to the Nazir that says Chatos v Osham Minayin. How do we know with regard to burning of the hair of the Nazir at the termination of his Nazirus that he doesn't have to, that although Lechatchili should burn it under the Shlomim, but nevertheless, B'di'eved, if he cast it beneath the Chatos or the Osham, he fulfills the obligation to Omer Zevach. But anyway, we see that the word Zevach includes both Chatos and Osham. So why do you need the O to include Osham? Why not suffice it with the word Zevach, which is going to come to teach you not only the Nesachim of not only the Chatas, but also of the Osham. Hani mili heicha de travayu ki hadodi ninu. When do we say that you derive Chatas and Osham from one word, meaning from the word Zevach? That's only because they are brought for the same purpose, namely the Chatos and the Osham are coming for the sake of a Nazir Tohar, to be matir him all the Isurim of a Nazir. So that's the case of a Nazir Tohar. Now, what about a Nazir Tomei? So the Torah says, Hayomim Harishonim Yitlu, that if the Nazir contracts Tumah, he's got to start his Nazirs from scratch with a new Malos and counting it again. And for that, he brings an Osham. So the Osham Tolui, I'm sorry, not Osham Tolui, I'm saying the Osham Nazir, in the case of a Nazir Shenitma, is coming to be matir the termination of his Nazirus such that now he can start a new Nazirus. The chatos of a Nazir is only relevant to a Nazir tar as he completes his Nazirus, his term of Nazirus, to be matir him b'shtiyas yayin, etc., etc. However, aval heicha di osham lahachshiv v'chatos lechaper be'inan trei kroi. So again, even though at the termination of his Nazirus he brings both a Chatas and an Osham, but the Chatas and the Osham have two different purposes. And why is that so? So Rashi here in the what we call the Ksavyad of Rashi says that the Osham permits him to enter into the Machne Yisrael through all the blood that's put on his toe and his thumb. The Chatas, on the other hand, is a kapora, because the Gemara establishes in Erchen Daf Tes Vav, no, maybe Tezayin, anyway, that for any of 7 Averos, he brings a Chatos. And any of those 7 Averos, a lot of them have to do with Lashon Hara and Beinodim L'Chavero. Anyway, they cause him to contract Tzoras as a punishment. And the Korban Chatos is a mechaper, whereas the Korban Oshim, as we said before, is only a machshir to allow him to enter into the machta. So therefore, be'inan trei kroy. Now we have another kasha. Zevach zu chatos mitzora, ve'ema zu chatos v'osham din nazir. How do you know that the word zevach is coming to teach you that you require niske yayin for a chatos mitzora? Maybe it's referring to a chatos of a nazir, or for that matter, chatos and an osham of a nazir. Zolzal kedaitach. Don't let this enter into your mind and cross your mind. This Sanya, we have a brace that says, with regard to nazir, in his in his km, So where is this pasuk? In Bamidbar, Parshas Nasa, the parsha of Nazir, Perek Vav. That when the Nazir completes his Nazirus, he brings an Ola, Chatos, and Shlomim, and all of these require Nesachim, as the Torah says, Minachosam v'Niskeim. Bi'oloso u'b'shlomov ha'akasuv midabim. Right, we said that a Nazir, when he completes his Nazirus, brings an Ola, a Chatos, and a Shlomim. So now, in the case of an Ola and a Shlomim, we're going to derive from the pasuk V'Niskeim that these karbanos of the Nazir have to be accompanied by Nisachim. Maybe even the Chatos that a Nazir brings at the termination of his Nazirus, a whole discussion why he brings a Chatos, but that's a different question. Is that also maybe should require Nisachim? Talmud Lomer Ves Ha'ayil Yaseh Zevach Shlomim. So now we have another klal prat uklal. Ayel b'klal hoya. V'lomayotza, why did the Torah add and specify the ayel in the pasuk v'esa ayel yaseh, etc., etc. Lakish elov ma ayel miyuchad ba b'neder u'b'nedava af kol sheba b'neder u'b'nedava, to exclude a chatos or the asham of a nazir, since they don't have neder or nedava, therefore they don't have nesachim. So therefore you can't tell me that the word zevach is coming to include the chatos or the asham of the nazir, because the chatos and the asham of the nazir were excluded from the nesachim based on the klal uprat, that ma'ayil miyuchad ba b'neder nedava af kol b'neder nedava, to the exclusion of chatos and asham and nazir. So since the chatos and the asham and nazir do not have nesachim, then when it says, "Oh, zevach," it cannot be coming for the chatos and the asham mitzora. I'm sorry, it cannot be coming for the chatos and the asham of a nazir. It has to be coming for the chatos of a mitzora. Frekta Gemara, Ola zu olas mitzora, v'ema zu olas yoledes. How do you know that the Torah is coming to be marbeh through the word ola, that an olas mitzora has to be accompanied by nisachim? Maybe it's referring to the ola of yoledes, a woman who gives birth has to bring her a keves, liola, and an oaf, shtei Torah, etc., as a chatos. Maybe we should derive from the word ola that an olas yoledes should require nisachim. Omar Abaye, olas yoledes misefer dekra nafka. So if I'm not mistaken, what Abaye is trying to convey is that in the case of an olas yoledes, she does have to bring nisachim. The Sanya, Rabbi Nosson Omer, la keves zu olas yoledes. And this is a pasuk in Bamidbar Perek Tes Vav. Ha'echad. Right, the pasuk says lekeves ha'echad. Ha'echad zeh achadasar shel maser shekariv shlomim. So again, the rule is that shlomim require nisachim. However, we have something called achadasar shel maser, which is brought b'shlomim, but there we need a special ribui to teach you that it requires nesachim. Shalomatzinu law b'chol Torah sheitofel chomer min ha'ikar. Okay, the bottom line is that an ola of a yoledes, as far as nesachim, is included based on the pasuk lakeves. So therefore, the other pasuk of ola is not necessary for a yoledes, and therefore it's coming to include the ola of a mitzora. Rava Amar, Rava has a different answer to this question. Eze davar shetzarach shlosha ribuyim hevi omer zu mitzora. Since there are 3 ribuyim in the pasuk, then that number 3 parallels the 3 karbanos of a mitzora bitarasa when he completes his tzaras, a chatos, an osham, and an ola. So we have 3 ribuyim, and they parallel the 3 karbanos of a mitzora. A nazir, on the other hand, requires chatos, ola, osham, and shlamim, which are 4 karbanos, and therefore we should have 4 psukim. Therefore, it's more likely that the Torah is alluding to the karbanos of mitzora than that of a nazir. The Gemara now asks li'ayel lamali. Just checking the time here. We don't have much time. Li'ayel lamali. Right? Why do I need a pasuk to include ayel, that it requires nesachim? Omer of Rav Sheshes l'rabos elo shel Aaron. That's the ayel that was brought by Aaron on Yom Kippur. And that's a korban yachid. That's his own personal, it comes from his own bank account. We already derived that any moed that generates a chiv korban, ipso facto, requires nesachim. I would have thought hanimi the tzibur. That's because the money for a korban of moed comes from the Trumas Halishka, the money of the community. Aval the Yachid Lo, but in the case of the Elo Shel Aaron on Yom Kippur, the money for the ayil has to come from his own personal bank account. Maybe I wouldn't require nisachim, and if I need a special pasuk of li ayil to be marba the Elo Shel Aaron on Yom Kippur, maish nomi olas yoledes. What about yoledes? And yoledes requires nisachim, even though it comes from her own bank account. Salka daitramina hani mili dover she'ein kavulo zman. Aval dover she'kavulo zman ema. I would have thought that it's like a korban tzibur, right? It's kavulo zman. In a certain sense, intuitively, the elo shel Yom Kippurim of a Kohen Gadol is very similar to a korban tzibur, and a korban tzibur is something that's kavulo zman. And therefore, Emalo, Kamash Malon, therefore I need a special ribu in the pasuk from the ayil that it requires nesachim. And what about Ola ayil? What about the extra word O? L'rabosa palgos. Okay, palgos is a gigantic sugya unto itself, where the machlok Shin Rabbi Yochanan and Barpada, I should say, and that Buli Neder will try to pick up tomorrow. Okay, then? So I wish you a great day. Thank you so much.